How important do you think, or I suppose you and I will both agree it's important, but if the call to action is if you see something, be able to act on it in some way, shape, or form. And even if we look at really the background of where the network started many, many years ago around the hotline solution, but so how connected should education and communication be to things like your policy management, your hotline, et cetera? Or, aside from saying it should all just be connected, I mean, is there a sweet spot, or are there certain connections that are more important than others, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I think, to me, it really, the trend that I believe the industry needs to move into is really this blurring of the lines between policies and training.
Okay.
This concept that, we used to get a nice legal written document as a policy. Hey, here's a 10-page document on, what not to do. And we know that people don't read it. We know that they don't embody it. They don't understand it, for that matter. It's sort of written very technically.
Right.
I think those aspects, when you think about how training can really help pull out the gist of what you're trying to get employees to think about. When you want them to understand what their behavior should be. What they should be acting on, and what are specific things they should look for. Not only what are the things they shouldn't do, but what are the things they should do.
Right.
A call to action of, if you see this, do this next, right? I think a lot of employees get confused about, I saw something, but I don't really know what to do with that information. I saw someone hacking our accounting system. Who do I tell? What do I do with that? Should I even say anything? So I think there's a lot of confusion around that when you think about training and policies, I think there's really a 2-for-1 there that we have to start thinking about, that it's really just one long spectrum of how we communicate and get our employees to really embody those values and those policies, and not just about, hey, there's a policy on the shelf, but then there's also, training that goes with the policy.
Right. So kind of have that as an integrated piece.
Yeah, and thinking about that, really as one big continuum of how do I drive that message to the employee base. I think there's a lot of other aspects that obviously help drive, sort of how you think about training specifically. So, if you're getting a lot of incident reports around harassment, from your Atlanta office, well, how do you drive sort of remediation on that? There may be additional training everybody has to go through. It may just be that, folks weren't aware of the policy or understand what, harassment looks like. So how do you drive that particular message?
I see.
And so, that can be a strong influence for training. But I think at the end of the day, if your training is well coupled with your policy base, then you don't have a decoupling of what your policy says and what your training is trying to expound on.
Yeah, and as you update one, by definition you'll update the other, especially as it's part of an integrated program.
Right. Well, and I think really the integration is thinking about how do you illustrate that policy. How do you bring that to life? Going back to our discussion about trying to address different generations of workforce. There's a lot of the younger generation that sort of likes to see the interactive. They want to see, they want to be shown, what do you mean by that? Show me that scenario. And I think that can really benefit everybody to understand, not only conceptually, hey, this is what harassment looks like, but, hey, this is how it may play out in real life, right? And being able to apply that, at least in your mind of, hey, I think I've seen that kind of situation before.
Right.
Or, last week I saw, Joe talking to Susie that way. I wouldn't have thought of it as harassment then, but now after I've gone through, the training and better understand, what it is and what our policy is around it, I may go back and call that out.
I see.